Well, Jim Carrey was one of the world's most famous actors, particularly in the 80s and the 90s. Even today, Jim Carrey is said to be worth about $150 million. That's not bad, sure it's not. But recently Jim Carrey was quoted as saying something really interesting. He said this: "I wish that everyone could get rich and famous and have everything they ever dreamed of, so they would know that it is not the answer." Isn't that a shocking statement? Here's Jim Carrey, someone who's tried and tested every avenue of pleasure, someone who is living the dream life. Yet he says, "I wish everyone could experience what I've experienced, all the things that they're yearning for, so that they would know it's not the answer." It doesn't bring contentment. And you know, all of us, if we're totally honest, have a contentment problem. We continually find ourselves thinking that if we could just change our circumstances, then we will be content and satisfied. Yet in this section of 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul wants to remind us that the people of God should be people who are content in spite of our circumstances. You might remember that at this point in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, the Apostle Paul's been dealing with different categories of people within the church: those who are single, those who are married, those who are married to someone who's not a Christian, those who are widowed. And at this point of 1 Corinthians, the Apostle Paul says, whatever your circumstances, you ought to be thankful, be content, and glorify God. In fact, that's really the message that he shares 3 times in these 8 verses. In spite of your circumstances, be thankful and glorify God. Read with me from verse 17, for example. It says, "Only let each person lead the life that the Lord has assigned to him and to which God has called him. This is my rule in all the churches." In other words, regardless of what life you live, what circumstances you've been dealt, be thankful. Accept your lot, glorify God. He says it again, look at verse 20. He says, "Each one should remain in the condition which he was called." The same thing in verse 24. "So brothers, in whatever condition each was called, there let him remain in God." Paul says, whatever circumstance you find yourself in, be thankful. Be satisfied. Hope in God. But the Apostle Paul is not just merely dealing with issues such as your marital status. So regardless of whether you're single or married, be satisfied. Regardless of whether you're widowed or married to a non-Christian, be content. No, the Apostle Paul actually deals with a variety of different circumstantial factors which too are prone to dictate our contentment. For example, you might see in verses 8 and 19, he deals with your ethnicity. He says, even depend on your ethnicity, your background, don't let that dictate your happiness or your contentment. But also in verse 20 and 21, your social status. Don't let your social status dictate your contentment. Allow your contentment to be found in Christ, regardless of your circumstances. And so here's your challenge for today. Where in your life are you tempted to try and change your circumstances in order to bring about your contentment? The Apostle Paul would say, don't invest so much time trying to change your circumstances. Rather, invest your time trying to glorify God in the midst of your current circumstances. Both the Bible and history testifies that a change of circumstances isn't ultimately going to bring us the contentment we crave. Rather, as the Apostle Paul would later say in Philippians, he has found the secret of contentment. Where's it found? Not in circumstances. It's found in Christ. Hope you have a great day.